The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council. It stood for 12,000 years on the planet called Nexus Prime. It was a place of peace, where representatives from over 300 alien species gathered to discuss trade, borders, and the small disagreements that arose between civilizations. The dome above was made of crystal that showed the stars, and the seats rose in circles like a massive theater. No war had touched this place in 10,000 years. The species who gathered here had forgotten what real conflict looked like. On this day, the chamber was full. Thousands of aliens of every shape and size sat in their assigned sections, their translators humming softly as they converted every language into something all could understand. Some had scales, some had fur, some were made of light or gas or things that had no name in any human tongue. They were old civilizations, powerful and wise, and they looked upon the younger races with a mixture of kindness and pity. Ambassador Vexari of the Zoroth Dominion rose from his seat. He was tall for his species, with gray skin stretched tight over a skull that came to a sharp point. 4 yellow eyes blinked in sequence as he looked around the chamber. His people were warriors once, long ago, but like all the others, they had grown soft in the peace of the council. Still, they remembered enough to know that power came from taking what you wanted. The automated voice of the chamber announced him. The council recognizes the Zoroth Dominion. Vexari spread his thin arms wide. Honored representatives, I bring news of expansion. 3 cycles ago, our fleet entered the Sol system on the outer edge of the galaxy. We have neutralized the human colony on Mars and struck their primary city on Earth, the one they called Houston. Whispers moved through the chamber like wind through grass. Several ambassadors turned to look at the observation level above, where a single human figure stood watching. The humans were new to space travel. They'd only discovered faster-than-light engines 40 years ago. They were young, primitive, and alone. The humans possessed resources we needed, Vexari continued, his translator turning his clicks into smooth words. Their system has rich deposits of metals that are rare elsewhere. We have claimed these territories by right of conquest, as was done in ancient times. High Arbiter Silmara floated forward from her position at the center of the chamber. She was an energy being, her true form contained within a shell of metal and glass that had been built for her thousands of years ago. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the room. Ambassador, Earth had applied for membership in this council. They were under provisional protection. Provisional, Vexari repeated, and there was pleasure in his voice. Not actual. We have broken no binding law. Above, on the observation level, Commander Lisa Grant gripped the railing so hard her fingers went white. She was 38 years old, with short brown hair and eyes the color of steel. She had served in Earth's space fleet for 15 years before being assigned to Nexus Prime as an unofficial diplomat. For 3 years, she had worked to build relationships, to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars, and now she listened. As an alien described the murder of 2 million of her people like it was nothing more than a business transaction, her communicator buzzed against her hip. She stepped back from the railing and answered it. Grant here. Commander, this is Admiral Pete Hawkins on the Resolute. The voice was calm, almost too calm. Pete Hawkins was 60 years old and had commanded Earth's home fleet for a decade. He had seen the attack happen. He had watched Houston burn from orbit. I assume you're hearing this? Yes, sir. The Zoroth ambassador is very proud of himself. Good. Then you can deliver our response. It's time the Council learned something about humanity, Commander. Something they should have learned before they let this happen. Lisa felt something cold settle in her chest. It was not fear. It was something else. Something that humans had carried with them since they first picked up rocks and sharpened sticks. What are my orders, Admiral? Tell them the truth. Tell them what they've done. And tell them what's coming. The communication ended. Lisa took a deep breath and walked toward the stairs that led down to the council floor. Security drones moved to block her path, but High Arbiter Silmara waved them aside. The ancient being was curious about this breach of protocol. Humans were supposed to wait until invited to speak. Lisa walked to the center of the chamber. Her boots made sharp sounds against the stone floor that had been walked upon by representatives of 1,000 worlds. She looked up at the faces staring down at her. Curiosity, pity, contempt. She had seen these expressions many times in her 3 years here. The older species always looked at humans this way, like adults watching children play. The council recognizes the human representative, Silmara announced. Though her voice carried uncertainty, Lisa did not bow or perform any of the ritual greetings that council protocol demanded. She simply stood there, a single human among thousands of aliens, and when she spoke, her voice was steady. 3 days ago, the Zorath Dominion killed 2 million human beings. They destroyed our largest spaceport. They burned a city that had stood for 300 years. Ambassador Vexeri believes this makes his people conquerors. She turned to look directly at the Zoroth delegation. Vexeri's 4 eyes met her too, and he clicked his mandibles in what she recognized as amusement. He is wrong. Vexeri rose again, his amusement clear for all to see. The human speaks bravely for a species that has just been humbled. Your military is primitive. Your fleet has fewer than 100 ships. The Dominion commands thousands. You're right about the numbers, Lisa said. But I wonder how much you really know about humanity. About our history. About what we are. She reached for the small device on her belt and activated her personal projector. Images began to appear in the air around her, floating like ghosts made of light. Ancient battlefields covered in bodies. Castles burning in the night. Soldiers charging through mud and wire while explosions tore the earth apart. Cities vanishing in mushroom clouds of fire. For most species in this council, Lisa said, war is something from ancient history. Something your ancestors did before they became civilized. You evolved past it. You forgot it. The images changed. Soldiers in powered armor, carrying weapons that could level buildings. Warships bristling with cannons and missile tubes. Space stations designed for one purpose only: destruction. Humans never forgot. We've been at war with ourselves since before we learned to write. We've built weapons that could end all life on our planet, and we've come very close to using them. Not once, not twice, but many times. We are the only species in this galaxy that has spent its entire existence fighting itself. She looked around at the silent chamber, at the aliens who were only now beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake, and when we reached for the stars, we brought that with us. Everything we are, everything we've learned in 1,000,000 years of killing each other. We built a military designed for one purpose: to fight and win wars against anyone, anywhere, at any time. Lisa smiled, and something in that expression made the nearest delegates lean away from her. You wanted to know what humanity is, Ambassador? We are what happens when evolution rewards violence. We are what happens when a species never stops fighting. And you just gave us a reason to show you what that means. The chamber had gone completely silent. Even the whispers had stopped. 300 species looked down at the lone human standing in the center of the floor. And for the first time in thousands of years, many of them felt something they had almost forgotten. Feared Ambassador Vexeri was the first to recover. He clicked his mandibles and let out a sound that his translator turned into laughter. Impressive speech, human. Your species has a gift for words. But words do not stop plasma cannons. Words do not shield your cities from orbital bombardment. The Dominion has already won this conflict. Your threats are nothing but air. Lisa Grant did not move. She did not raise her voice. She simply reached into her pocket and pulled out a small communication device. You're right that words mean nothing, Ambassador. Which is why, approximately 6 hours ago, the United Earth Navy deployed its response. The silence that followed was different from before. It was the silence of beings who have just realized that the ground beneath them is not as solid as they thought. 6 hours ago, Lisa continued, while you were preparing to come here and boast about your victory, our stealth frigates were already in position around Zorth Prime. They've been there for months, actually. We've been watching your military build-up since it started. Did you really think we didn't know you were planning something? Vextherius for eyes blinked rapidly. That's impossible. Our sensors would have detected any human vessels in our space. Your sensors are designed to detect ships that want to be found. Ours don't. Lisa held up the communication device. I just received confirmation. The first strike has been completed. 12 military installations on Zorath Prime have been destroyed. Your main shipyard is gone. Your orbital defense command is gone. Your fleet coordination center is gone. The Zorath ambassador made a strange choking sound. Around the chamber, other delegates began talking all at once, their translators creating a chaos of overlapping voices. High Arbiter, Silmara, raised her metal arms, and the chaos slowly died down. Commander Grant, are you saying that Earth has launched an attack on Zorath Prime? Without council approval? Without any attempt at negotiation? Lisa turned to face the ancient being. With respect, High Arbiter, the Zoroth didn't ask for council approval before they killed 2 million of my people. They didn't attempt negotiation before they burned Houston to the ground. They struck without warning and without mercy. We've responded in kind, but with one important difference. She looked around the chamber, making sure every species heard her next words. We didn't target civilians. Every strike was against military infrastructure only. Our casualty estimates suggest fewer than 10,000 Zorath deaths, all of them military personnel. We could have killed millions. We chose not to. Why? The question came from Ambassador Turvel of the Mendari Collective. He was a tall, thin being with limbs that seemed to flow like water when he moved. His species was known for their philosophy and their curiosity. If you have such power, why show restraint? Lisa met his eyes. Because we're not monsters, Ambassador. We're soldiers. There's a difference. Soldiers fight other soldiers. Monsters kill everyone. She paused. The Zorath killed our civilians. We killed their military. That's the lesson. That's what we want the galaxy to understand. On the other side of the galaxy, far from the peaceful chamber of the Council, that lesson was being taught in fire and blood. General Commander Crixtal stood on the bridge of his orbital command, stationed and watched his world burn. The attack had come without warning, without any sign that human ships were even in the system. One moment, his defense network had been operating normally. The next moment, it was gone. Platform after platform went dark. Shield generators exploded. Communication relays were cut. In less than 3 minutes, the entire defensive grid that protected Zoroth Prime had been destroyed. We're receiving reports from the surface. His aide was young, barely out of training, and his voice shook with terror. The humans struck the main shipyard. The secondary shipyard. The training facilities on the southern continent. The fuel depots. The ammunition factories. Casualties. Crixtal asked, though he dreaded the answer. Minimal civilian casualties, sir? They only hit military targets. But the damage to our infrastructure is... The aide couldn't finish the sentence. Crixtal understood. The humans hadn't come to conquer. They had come to cripple. In a single strike, they had destroyed the Zorath Dominion's ability to wage war. It would take years, perhaps decades, to rebuild what had been lost. And during that time, the Dominion would be defenseless. Sir, we're detecting the human ships now. They're leaving. What? Crixtal rushed to the sensor display. There they were, dozens of small, fast ships, climbing away from the planet and accelerating toward deep space. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. They had done what they came to do, and now they were leaving. Should we pursue, sir? Crixtal watched the human ships disappear into the darkness. His fleet was scattered, his defenses were ruined, and his people were in chaos. Even if he could organize a pursuit, what would be the point? The humans had shown that they could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. Chasing them would only give them another opportunity to demonstrate that power. Oh, he said quietly. Contact the Council. Tell them we wish to negotiate. Back on Nexus Prime, Lisa Grant received word of the Zorath surrender request with no visible reaction. She had expected it. Human military strategists had studied the Zorath for years, learning their weaknesses, mapping their defenses, preparing for exactly this situation. The strike had been planned months in advance, waiting only for the Zorath to make the first move. The Dominion requests a ceasefire, High Arbiter Silmara announced, her energy form flickering with what might have been relief. They wish to discuss terms. Of course they do, Lisa said. Their military has been destroyed. Their ability to project power beyond their own system is gone. They have no choice but to negotiate. Vexeri rose from his seat, and for the first time, his four eyes showed something other than arrogance. They showed fear. The Dominion is prepared to return to the status quo. We will withdraw from your system. We will release any prisoners. This conflict can end today. Lisa shook her head slowly. No, Ambassador. It can't. You started this war. We're going to finish it. And when we're done, the entire galaxy is going to understand what happens when you attack Earth. She stepped closer to the Zoroth delegation, her voice dropping to something just above a whisper. We didn't ask for this. We came to the stars hoping for peace. We applied for council membership because we wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We wanted to believe that the universe was better than we were. She paused. You proved us wrong. You showed us that even out here, among the stars, there are predators who prey on the weak. So now we're going to show you something in return. Lisa straightened up and addressed the entire council. Humanity has been fighting for survival since we climbed down from the trees. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars that killed hundreds of millions. We've split the atom and walked on other worlds. We've done things that would have destroyed any other species. And we're still here. We're still standing. She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. The Zoroth thought we were weak because we were young. They were wrong. We're not weak. We're just getting started. The emergency session of the Galactic Council continued through the night cycle. Representatives argued and shouted and pleaded, their translators working overtime to keep up with the chaos. Some demanded that humanity be condemned for its attack on Zoroth Prime. Others pointed out that the Zoroth had struck first and deserved what they got. A few simply sat in stunned silence. Trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly, Lisa Grant stood at the center of it all, answering questions and deflecting accusations with the calm patience of someone who knew she held all the power. She had been trained for this moment her entire career, even if she hadn't known it at the time. Every diplomatic posting, every negotiation, every late night studying alien psychology had led to this. Commander Grant, High Arbiter Silmara said, her energy form pulsing with exhaustion, this council demands an explanation. How did your species develop such military capability in secret? How did you position forces around Zoroth Prime without detection? We had 40 years to prepare, Lisa replied simply. When humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel, we sent exploration ships in every direction. We mapped the galaxy. We studied every species we could find. And we realized something very quickly. What did you realize? Ambassador Terval asked. The Mendari was fascinated by humans, Lisa had noticed. His species valued knowledge above all else, and humanity was clearly something worth understanding. We realized that we were the only species in this galaxy that had fought a real war in the last 10,000 years. Every other civilization had evolved past conflict. You settled your disagreements with words and treaties. Your militaries were symbolic at best. You had no experience with actual warfare. Lisa walked slowly around the chamber floor, her boots echoing in the vast space. So we prepared. In secret, we built shipyards in the asteroid belt of our system, hidden from any sensors. We developed new weapons, new shields, new propulsion systems. We trained our soldiers using methods that had been perfected over centuries of human conflict. And we waited. Waited for what? Silmara asked. For someone to attack us. We knew it would happen eventually. There's always someone who looks at a young, vulnerable species and sees an easy target. The Zoroth just happened to be the first. In the Zoroth delegation section, Ambassador Vexeri sat slumped in his seat. His four eyes were dull, his mandibles slack. Every few minutes, he received another update from his homeworld, and each one was worse than the last. The humans had not just struck military targets, they had systematically destroyed every facility the Dominion used to build and maintain its fleet, shipyards, factories, training centers. fuel depots, ammunition plants. All of it was gone. The Zorth Dominion still existed. Its people were alive. Its cities still stood. But its ability to project power beyond its own system had been erased in a single night. It would take generations to rebuild. The Dominion requests terms, Vexeri said, his voice barely audible. What does humanity want? Lisa stopped her pacing and turned to face him. First, you will return every human prisoner taken during your attack. Every single one, unharmed. Agreed. Second, you will pay reparations for every life lost and every structure destroyed. The amount will be determined by a joint committee of Earth and Council representatives. Vexeri hesitated, but only for a moment. Agreed. Third, you will publicly acknowledge that your attack on Earth was unjustified and unprovoked. This acknowledgement will be broadcast to every species in the galaxy. This was harder for the Zorth ambassador to accept. His species valued honor above almost everything else. A public admission of wrongdoing would shame the Dominion for generations. But he had no choice. Agreed, he said through clenched mandibles. Fourth, and finally, you will accept permanent monitoring of your military capabilities. A joint oversight committee of Earth and Council representatives will have full access to all Zorth military facilities. Any attempt to rebuild offensive capability without permission will be considered an act of war. That is unacceptable, Vexeri protested, some of his old fire returning. You ask us to surrender our sovereignty. I ask you to accept the consequences of your actions, Lisa replied coolly. You attacked a peaceful world without provocation. You killed millions of innocent people. You did this because you thought we were weak and could not fight back. You were wrong. She stepped closer to the Zorath delegation. These terms are generous, Ambassador. The alternative is the complete destruction of the Zoroth Dominion as a political entity. We have the capability to do it. We have the will. The only question is whether you're wise enough to accept mercy when it's offered. Every eye, every sensor, every form of perception was focused on the Zoroth ambassador. The fate of his entire species rested on his next words. For a long moment, Vexeri said nothing. His four eyes moved slowly around the chamber, looking at the faces of delegates who had once respected the Dominion. Now they looked at him with something new. Not respect. Not fear. Pity. The mighty Zoroth, brought low by a species barely out of its cradle. We accept, he said finally. All terms? A collective breath seemed to release from the chamber. Several delegates actually applauded, though whether they were celebrating peace or humanity's victory was unclear. High Arbiter, Silmara, raised her metal arms for silence. This council witnesses and records the agreement between Earth and the Zoroth Dominion. Let it be known that peace has been achieved and that justice has been served. Lisa nodded, but she did not smile. She knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had just learned what humanity was capable of, and that knowledge would change everything. Some species would fear them. Others would seek their protection. A few might even try to challenge them, to prove that the humans could be beaten. They would learn the same lesson the Zoroth had learned. After the session ended, Lisa found a quiet corner of the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Her communicator buzzed with messages from Earth, from the fleet, from dozens of diplomats who wanted to discuss the implications of what had just happened. She ignored them all. Ambassador Tervel found her there an hour later. The Mendari moved quietly despite his size, and his voice was gentle when he spoke. You are troubled, Commander Grant. Lisa didn't look away from the stars. 2 million of my people are dead, Ambassador. Troubled doesn't begin to cover it. Yet you have achieved a great victory. The Zoroth are defeated. Earth is safe. Your species has proven itself to the galaxy. Is that what you call it? A great victory? Lisa finally turned to face him. Her eyes were tired, and there was something in them that Tervel couldn't quite identify. We've just shown 300 species that humanity is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. We've proven that we can strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. We've made ourselves into the thing that everyone fears. Tervel considered this for a moment. And this troubles you? It terrifies me, Lisa admitted, because I know what humans are capable of when we're afraid. And now, the whole galaxy is afraid of us. The weeks that followed the Zoroth surrender were among the strangest in galactic history. For 10,000 years, the balance of power in the Council had remained essentially unchanged. The older species held the most influence, while the younger ones worked their way up through decades or centuries of diplomatic effort. Wars were things of the distant past, settled by treaties that had been written before some species had even achieved space travel. Now, everything was different. Earth's small delegation on Nexus Prime was suddenly the most visited office in the diplomatic quarter. Ambassadors who had ignored humans for years now lined up to request meetings. Some came with offers of friendship and alliance. Others came with warnings and threats. A few came simply to look at the humans, as if trying to understand how such a young species had managed to defeat one of the galaxy's established powers in a single day. Lisa Grant met with them all. She had been officially promoted to ambassador, the first human to hold that title in the Galactic Council. Her small team of diplomats and analysts worked around the clock to manage the flood of requests, questions, and proposals that arrived every hour. The Sindari Collective wishes to establish a mutual defense agreement. Her aide, a young man named Kevin Park, reported during one of their daily briefings. They're offering full military cooperation in exchange for access to our stealth technology. Lisa shook her head. Decline. We're not sharing our military technology with anyone. What else? The Vorn Republic is requesting human military advisors to help modernize their defense forces. They're offering significant trade concessions in return. That one's interesting. Put it in the maybe pile. What about the Council itself? Kevin scrolled through his tablet. High Arbiter Silmara has called an emergency session to discuss the establishment of a new security framework. Apparently, watching us take apart the Zoroth made quite an impression. Several species are questioning whether their current defenses are adequate. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. I imagine they are. After 10,000 years of peace, most of these civilizations couldn't defend themselves against a determined group of pirates, let alone a real military threat. We've reminded them that the universe can be a dangerous place. Is that what we wanted? Kevin asked carefully. He was young, barely 30, and still idealistic enough to believe that diplomacy could solve everything. It's what we needed, Lisa replied. The galaxy forgot how to fight. That made it vulnerable. Now, they're remembering, and they're looking to us for help. She stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the capital city of Nexus Prime. The question is whether we use this moment to make the galaxy safer, or whether we become the very thing that everyone feared we would be, across the galaxy. On Earth, that same question was being debated in every capital, every military headquarters, and every home. The Zoroth attack had killed 2 million people. The response had saved billions. But at what cost? Admiral Pete Hawkins sat in his office at Fleet Command and stared at the reports on his desk. The Resolute and its task force had returned to Earth orbit, heroes to some and demons to others. His sailors were being celebrated in the streets and questioned by ethics committees. The same actions were called brilliant and barbaric, depending on who was speaking. Sir, you have a call from the Council. His aide appeared in the doorway. Ambassador Grant. Hawkins activated his communication screen. Lisa's face appeared, tired but determined. I wanted to give you an update on the diplomatic situation. Go ahead, Ambassador. I could use some good news. The Council has formally invited Earth to participate in a new security initiative. They want us to help design a defensive framework that will protect all member species against future threats. It's essentially an acknowledgement that we're the only ones who know how to fight anymore. Hawkins leaned back in his chair. That's quite an honor. Are we accepting? I recommended that we do. But with conditions. Lisa paused. We're not going to become the galaxy's police force, Admiral. We're not going to fight everyone's battles for them. What we will do is teach them how to defend themselves. We'll share some of our tactics, some of our strategies. We'll help them build military forces that can actually function in a real conflict. And in return, we get full membership in the Council with all the rights and privileges that implies. Trade agreements. territorial recognition. Access to technology that took other species thousands of years to develop. Lisa smiled slightly. We also get something less tangible but more important. Respect. The galaxy will never look at humanity the same way again. We're not the young species begging for acceptance anymore. We're equals, partners. Hawkins nodded slowly. The Council agreed to all of this. They didn't have much choice. The Zorth situation showed them how vulnerable they really are. If we hadn't been there to handle it, they would have had no idea what to do. They need us, Admiral. They're just now realizing how much. After the call ended, Hawkins sat alone in his office for a long time. He had served in Earth's military for 40 years, since before humanity had even achieved faster-than-light travel. He had watched his species grow from a young civilization barely able to defend its own system to a power that could challenge, establish galactic empires. It was everything he had worked for his entire career. So why did it feel so hollow? He thought about the Zoroth. A proud species, arrogant and aggressive, but not really so different from humanity in many ways. They had seen an opportunity and taken it. They had miscalculated badly. But their basic motivations were ones that any human could understand. Power, resources, security, and humanity had crushed them in a single day, not defeated, not pushed back. Crushed, the Zorth Dominion would never recover from this blow. They would exist for generations as a shadow of what they had been, dependent on the mercy of the species they had tried to conquer. It was a fate that Hawkins could easily imagine befalling Earth. Circumstances had been different. Was this what victory felt like? This mixture of pride and guilt and fear? His communicator buzzed again. This time, it was a message from the Council. Forwarded by Ambassador Grant, the High Arbiter was formally requesting Earth's participation in the new security initiative. The vote had been unanimous. Every species in the galaxy wanted humanity's help. Hawkins looked at the message for a long time before responding. Then he typed 2 words and sent them back. We accept. On Nexus Prime, Lisa Grant received the Admiral's response and allowed herself a moment of genuine relief. It was done. Earth was part of the galactic community now, not as a junior partner or a charity case, but as an equal. Everything she had worked for had come true, though not in the way she had expected. She looked out at the stars and wondered what the future would bring. Humanity had proven itself capable of great violence. The question now was whether they could also prove themselves capable of great wisdom. The galaxy was watching. 6 months passed. On Nexus Prime, the great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled to capacity once again. But this time, the mood was different. There was no crisis, no emergency, no whispered fears about what might happen next. Instead, there was something that the Council had not felt in a very long time. Hope Lisa Grant stood at the center of the chamber floor. But she was not alone. Behind her stood a delegation of 20 humans. Military officers and diplomats and scientists, all wearing the formal uniform of Earth's newly established Galactic Affairs Division. They were the first official representatives of humanity in the Council, beginning of something new. High Arbiter Silmara floated forward, her energy form bright and steady. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. It is my honor and privilege to formally admit the United Earth Government as the 317th member species of the Galactic Council. May this partnership bring prosperity and peace to all who share the stars. The applause that followed was not quite unanimous. Lisa could see the delegates who clapped reluctantly or not at all. Some species still feared humanity. Others resented the way the young civilization had forced its way into galactic affairs. A few simply could not accept that the balance of power had shifted so dramatically in such a short time. But most of the chamber was genuinely welcoming. Delegates rose from their seats to show respect. Some made gestures of greeting specific to their species. A few even cheered, a sound that the translators struggled to convey across so many different forms of communication. Lisa accepted the welcome with grace and humility. She had learned a lot in the months since the Zoroth conflict. She had learned that power without wisdom was dangerous, that fear without understanding led to hatred, and that the hardest battles were often fought after the shooting stopped. After the ceremony, she was surrounded by delegates eager to establish relationships with the new galactic power. She shook hands in appendages and energy tendrils, making promises and accepting invitations, building the foundation of what she hoped would be a better future. Ambassador Tervel of the Mendari Collective was among the first to congratulate her. His long limbs folded into an elaborate gesture of respect. "You have accomplished something remarkable, Ambassador Grant. Your species has gone from unknown to essential in less than a year. How does it feel?" Lisa considered the question carefully. "It feels like the beginning of something, Ambassador, not the end. We've proven that we can fight. Now we need to prove that we can do more than that. Can you? Can humanity be more than warriors?" "I hope so. I really do." In the months that followed, Earth's role in the galaxy expanded rapidly. Human military advisors were assigned to dozens of species, helping them rebuild defensive capabilities that had been neglected for thousands of years. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists to develop new technologies that combined the best of both worlds. Human diplomats negotiated trade agreements that brought prosperity to Earth and its new partners alike. It was not always easy. Some species resisted change, clinging to old ways that had served them well for millennia. Others pushed too hard, wanting to adopt human methods wholesale without understanding the context behind them. And there were always those who looked at humanity and saw only the violence, only the capacity for destruction, never the capacity for growth. Lisa dealt with all of it. She had become the face of humanity in the galaxy, the person that other species thought of when they thought of Earth. It was a responsibility she had never asked for, but one she was determined to fulfill. One evening, a year after the Zoroth conflict, she stood on the observation deck of the council building and looked out at the stars. Earth was somewhere out there, a small blue dot orbiting an ordinary yellow sun. 2 million of its people had died in the Zoroth attack. Many more had been born since then. Life went on, as it always did. Admiral Pete Hawkins found her there. He had traveled to Nexus Prime for a security conference, his first trip off Earth since the war. He looked older than she remembered, more tired, but there was still steel in his eyes. "Ambassador, you've done good work here." "Thank you, Admiral. Though I'm not sure good is the right word. Necessary might be more accurate." Hawkins nodded slowly. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, what we did, whether it was right, and what did you conclude? That there's no easy answer. We saved our species. We might have doomed our souls. Or maybe we just did what any civilization would do when faced with extinction. History will judge us. All we can do is try to be worthy of that judgment." Lisa turned back to the stars. The Zoroth are rebuilding. Slowly, under supervision, but they're rebuilding. In a generation or two, they'll be a functional civilization again. Not the power they were, but something. Maybe something better. And us. What are we becoming? "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "We're not the same species that reached for the stars 40 years ago. We've seen too much, done too much, but maybe that's okay. Maybe growing up means accepting that the universe isn't what you hoped it would be, and doing your best anyway." Hawkins was silent for a moment. Then he reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. "When I was young, I believed that humanity's destiny was among the stars. I believed that we were meant for something greater than our small world. I still believe that, Ambassador. But now I understand that greater doesn't just mean more powerful. It means wiser, more compassionate, more willing to learn from our mistakes." Lisa placed her hand over his. "The galaxy is watching us, Admiral. Every species out there is waiting to see what humanity will become. Will we be the warriors who crush the Zorath in a single day? Or will we be something else? Something better? What do you think we'll be?" Lisa smiled, and for the first time in a long while, there was genuine warmth in it. "I think we'll be human. We'll make mistakes. We'll do things we regret. We'll fight when we should talk, and talk when we should fight. We'll be selfish and generous, cruel and kind, brilliant and foolish, all at the same time." She turned to face him. "But we'll also adapt. We'll learn. We'll grow. Because that's what we've always done." That's who we are. The stars shone down on them, billions of points of light in an infinite darkness. Somewhere out there, other species were watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Some hoped for the best. Others feared the worst, but Lisa Grant knew the truth. Humanity would surprise them all. For better or worse, in ways that no one could predict. They would surprise them all. Because that was what it meant to be human. To endure, to adapt. To fight when necessary, and sometimes, just sometimes, to be better than anyone expected. The galaxy had asked what humanity was capable of. Now, it would spend the rest of eternity finding out.